Good morning and welcome. Thank you to Rebecca and the City of Whittlesea for organising today's business continuity webinar, and a large thank you to all of you for joining us. Business continuity is something that has been around for a long time and is mostly used by large firms and governments to ensure essential services continue to be delivered during disasters and disruptions, which are types of risks. Recently, there has been an increasing need and interest for business continuity plans in small to medium businesses. In fact, a business continuity plan is a way to protect a business from the consequences of disasters such as, but not limited to, a pandemic like COVID-19. Today, some of the industries we have joining us are business consulting, fabrication, IT services, disability support, plumbing, economic development and tourism, pet food, and sports and recreation. And I can see the direct impacts that the pandemic, and particularly stages 3 and 4, have had on you. Some of the direct impacts have been closed facilities leading to full shutdowns, reduced numbers of staff allowed on site, which can cause safety concerns, work from home restrictions, the dreaded permitted worker permits, lack of tourism, and generally a loss of income for most involved. Today, we will cover the following elements of this thing titled business continuity. What is business continuity? Why a business continuity plan is becoming increasingly important? When is a business continuity plan used? The elements of a business continuity plan? How to create a business continuity plan? Staff involvement from creation to ongoing management? Stress testing? Costs? Potential government grants, and we'll set aside some time at the end for discussion and questions. Please use the chat function throughout the presentation to note your name and any questions you may have, and we'll go through as many of your questions as time permits at the end of the presentation.
We'd like to introduce ourselves and our company. Firstly, I'm John Gawn. I established Resilient Services 2.5 years ago. My first assignment was writing a report for the Premier on business continuity or disaster management, where it related to a prolonged power outage. Since then, we've supplied similar services across Australia and New Zealand for ASX top 100 companies and governments. These services have included health management plans for COVID, business continuity, risk assessment, and disaster management plans. I'd also like to introduce Brianna Chapman. Bree is our business continuity expert and our operations manager. She brings many years of experience developing business continuity, pandemic and disaster management plans for large businesses and governments across Australia and New Zealand. She also runs a webinar group called the Women in Resilience Leadership Series. Bree was my very first employee, and now we have 7 specialist staff. When we established the business, we believed that there was a need for businesses like yours outside of government and the ASX top 100 to access practically and easily understood methods to help them deal with disasters. Industrial and commercial buyers of goods and services, customers and insurers are now starting to request that businesses have some sort of business continuity or disaster management plan to manage the risks that might interrupt their delivery. And it's worth noting that living or working in the Whittlesea Shire increases the likelihood of a disaster that will interrupt your business. The City of Whittlesea has experienced a long history of natural disasters, including at least 10 substantial bushfires, including Black Saturday, 14 floods, which I found to be amazing, countless blackouts, and the loss of internet, telephones, traffic accidents, and roadblocks. Disasters, big or small, can affect your business, you personally, your staff, your suppliers, and most importantly, your customers. Today is about either preventing the effect of disasters on your business or assisting you to continue trading when a disaster strikes. While we have the relevant qualifications, we are operational people at heart. We understand what it's like to be boots on the ground. We believe that an effective plan must be something that anybody in the organisation can pick up and implement. So let's go.
What exactly is business continuity? Well, isn't that the million-dollar question you all want to know the answer to? A business continuity plan is really just a fancy name for a contingency plan or a self-insurance plan. It's a plan that will keep your business going when you can't operate as normal. To be a tad more specific, it's a risk identification, risk elimination, and disaster management plan all rolled into one. So far, this is probably sounding about as clear as mud, but stick with me anyway, and soon it'll make sense. For a business continuity plan to work, the risk identification and disaster management part of the plan must be personalised to your business. Why should you worry about risk identification and disaster management? Well, identifying the risks to your business provides you with the ability and opportunity to eliminate the risks, or, at worst, allows you to figure out how to deal with them before they materialise. Now, this sounds highly technical and boring. The good news is, it isn't. It is very practical. Let's take COVID as an example. If you knew last year what you know now, what would you have done differently? Would you have had more or less stock on hand? Would you have created an online presence earlier? Would you have closed down and moved to a different state where you could be freely trading now? That last one's a bit extreme. But business continuity aims to highlight your risks or business challenges before the event so that you can adequately prepare for it. COVID is an extreme risk. Day-to-day risks are more readily identifiable. So how do you begin the business continuity process? Well, the best place to start is to identify the 5 or 10 most important things that your business must do to keep you trading. These are usually the things that, if they're not completed in the first few days after being interrupted, will threaten the viability of your business. This takes a bit of brainstorming, but once you get into the rhythm, you quickly realise what is fundamental to allow your business to trade. Let's use an example. Say you're a manufacturing company who sells bogites, and please note that these are a fictitious element for road construction. Bogites are the backbone of the business, a major component for construction of roads, which is an essential service. You have a major contract for bogites, and they must be delivered monthly to a major customer. These companies or customers rely on the bogites for all their road projects, so making these bogites is what makes the company money, and hence it's a top priority. When we're talking about the 5 or 10 most critical things your business does, we're looking for the 5 to 10 critical things that need to happen to make sure that you can sell your bogites. So for example, 1, constructing the bogites. 2, ordering in bogite materials. 3, transporting the bogites to customers. 4, invoicing your customers. And 5, paying creditors such as staff, suppliers, and so on. In the textbooks, they collectively call what I just listed as critical business processes. But I'm not a big fan of the jargon. Today, I want to call them your business's must-dos. In other words, these things must be done. Once you've identified 5 to 10 must-dos, we can break each one of these individual must-dos down even further by looking at each must-do and asking ourselves, how many staff are needed to do this must-do? Are computers required? Mobile phones? Logistics? Is this must-do outsourced? Think of all the things that must be available to do this must-do. If any of these things isn't available at any time, your business could be at risk. So by identifying these things, you are identifying the risks. Let's use the bogite construction must-do. Having gone through the risk identification process we just spoke about, they identified that bogites require people with some specialist skills, IT systems, workspace, componentry, delivery, and logistics. The bogite business has worked out there are multiple people required, some with specialist skills, to carry out bogite construction. Therefore, absenteeism is an issue, particularly through a pandemic. Bogite construction can be carried out without IT systems, and if worst came to worst, could be completed on the back of a trailer. So no need for a factory or IT system availability. This business discovered that a particular Bogite component is made in Adelaide, and the South Australian border is now closed and they can no longer obtain delivery on time. So there are two major risks: staff availability and component delivery. The staff availability question can be resolved through the issue of work permits, COVID safe plans, and the introduction of PPE and work practices. That means the major risk is that they're no longer able to get the component due to border restrictions. Without this essential piece of kit, they cannot deliver their most important product to their customers. The consequence of not being able to deliver means that they'll have disgruntled customers, unhappy about the delays being caused, face possible contractual damages, and the customers may even decide to take their business elsewhere. So the real risk is, without this piece of componentry, they could lose their customers and the business faces a very uncertain future, to say the least. A business continuity plan allows you to identify these risks and preempt them. Once the risk is identified, you can investigate alternatives or contingencies. For instance, should you carry buffer stock or a stockpile to cater for interruptions? Is there another trucking company that can deliver this across the border? Are there substitute components to enable Bogite construction? Are there local suppliers that you can use? Do other players in the industry have buffer stock that you could buy in the meantime? Or can you negotiate a delayed delivery with your client? All of these actions can prevent the consequence of the risk. Many might argue that COVID created the risk in this example, but it did not. It merely materialised the risk of a single supplier of a critical component or the loss of key staff. Think about the must-dos in your business, the top 5 to 10 items that your business must do to maintain viability, and there will be single points of failure. These risks of failure can be preempted. Of course, there are some risks that cannot be prevented. Either the solution is not worth the cost, it isn't practical, the chance of the risk occurring may be quite remote, or perhaps there isn't really anything you can do at all. This is the dual purpose of the business continuity plan. Completely prevent the risks you can and be aware of those that you can't, so you can have an action plan in place for when they do become real. We'll provide another example later in the presentation regarding a cafe.
Yeah, and just for your notice too, that you have been sent an email that's got a worksheet. So don't furiously take notes, because all of these topics will have a worksheet that you can look at later. Look, there's 3 very good reasons for businesses, but also community groups, large, medium or small, to have a business continuity plan. Firstly, a disaster such as COVID, or for an interruption as small as a power blackout, can be managed and you won't suffer financial pain. You can eliminate or minimise risks that could affect your profitability, reputation, or service continuity when disaster hits. Remember, these types of disasters that can affect your business, they can happen daily, and they don't have to be the types of disasters like a pandemic or a large-scale bushfire that we actually think about. It can be as small as a road closure. It can be the loss of your IT systems. Someone with a backhoe hits the water main out the front and your staff can't come to work because basic hygiene is not allowed. There'll always be circumstances that a business continuity plan can cater for, and they can cater for the prolonged disruptions caused by pandemics, bushfires, cyber attacks, etc. It's merely the scale differs to the smaller ones. Think about the times your business was interrupted before COVID. In lots of ways, your customers are likely to be more forgiving in the situation of a large bushfire or a pandemic that's caused the disruption to service. They may get particularly salty, however, if delivery is delayed due to an IT fault or a supplier issue or an issue that is specific to you. The lesson I want you to take here is that a business continuity caters for small, medium, and large scale disruptions. The second reason for you to have a business continuity plan is over the course of the COVID-19, many businesses have been let down by their suppliers. Now, as your big customers issue new contracts or place orders, particularly in the business-to-business transacting, they're starting to insist on a business continuity plan or a guarantee that the goods and services will be delivered no matter what. By way of example, I understand Coles and Woolworths are asking for business continuity plans to be provided for all new supply agreements, as are insurance companies. A BCP will provide assurance to your customers that you're able to deliver in normal or extraordinary times. The third reason is to develop a strategic competitive advantage over your competitors. It will enable you to trade while others cannot. Those affected customers will be looking for new suppliers. Let those business customers come to you, and you may well pick them up for life when their usual outlet has let them down. Now, why is a BCP becoming increasingly important? I think you'll agree with me that 2020 has been a year of disasters, many of which have affected the city of Whittlesea. Not only have we been faced with the biggest challenge in recent memory, COVID-19, there has been other disasters, fires, floods, windstorms, mass power outages, just to name a few. The sheer number of crises this year has forced customers and suppliers to look at the risks they might face. As mentioned before, it has become increasingly common for these groups to ask for a business continuity plan before agreeing to do business. In addition to this, after seeing the damage that COVID and other disasters have had in their businesses, most are looking for innovative ways to continue trade during business interruptions. In simple terms, they want to make sure that they keep their livelihoods and keep their jobs and keep their customers serviced. We at Resilient Services are becoming increasingly confident that business continuity plans of the likes are no longer going to be the sole domain of ASX, top 100 companies and government. Instead, small to medium enterprises and community services groups like yourself are looking for new ways to eliminate or treat the risks that your business faces, either because you've been forced by your customers to do so, or you're looking for a strategic competitive advantage.
At this point, we're going to lay down the steps you need to take to create your own business continuity plan. I want you all to keep in mind that the larger the plan, the less likely it is to be either developed or used. I think you'll agree to the KISS principle. Keep it simple. The very worst outcome for any disaster plan is to create a shelf document, which is any document that sits on the shelf and never gets used, even when it should be. I recommend the same approach for a strategy document. I'm sure most of you have seen or received a business, marketing, or financial plan that looks tremendous, gets everybody excited, and then they sit on the bookshelf until someone finds them a few years later and throws them out. The same applies for a BCP. As we discussed, we suggest that you consider the top 5 must-dos, the things that make your business viable. Write them down. Please don't do any more at this early stage, or it will quickly become overwhelming. I'll give you a moment now to have a think of a couple. Now, if you've thought of a couple of your must-dos, or even if you've managed to get 5 already, rank them in order from the most damaging to your business's profitability or reputation to the least important if not completed. It is helpful here to remember that business continuity is always planned from a realistic worst-case scenario. So it's the worst possible day for anything and everything to go wrong. Now, starting at the must-do, you've put it as a number 1. You'll work through a series of questions or attributes for each must-do. This we have aligned to the International Standard for Business Continuity. Now, please stay with me. I'm deploying the KISS principle here. And please bear in mind, this detailed next step will need to be completed after the webinar, and you'll have a worksheet to help you. So cover off all 6 of these attributes for your must do. Attribute 1, list how many people are required at a bare minimum to deliver this must do. Also list if they have any specialist skills. Attribute 2, list all suppliers that perform services or deliver products that you'll need to complete this must do. Include logistics, components, other services, raw materials, and so on. Attribute 3, does the must do require the use of specialist equipment? If so, list what equipment. This can include machinery, special delivery trailers, and so forth. Attribute 4, is this must do dependent on IT or telephony? List what software or applications are used, along with the hardware, such as computers, landlines, mobiles, payment processing machines, etc. Attribute 5, are there financial transactions or payments that need to be made to enable this must do to be completed? Attribute 6, list the building and facilities that are required that support this must do. This might include a retail outlet, a factory, warehouse, and so on. Now, considering these 6 attributes, think about the things that could stop them from being available. For example, specialist staff being unavailable could be caused by an industrial dispute, road closure, illness, pandemic stage 4 restrictions, or you may not be able to process EFT payments if the internet is down. Do this for each of the listed items. Now that you've highlighted the risk of losing an attribute, consider whether there is a way you could prepare for this happening. For each must do, if there are any attributes that you aren't prepared for and they're likely to stop production or trade, ask how long is the business able to cope without delivering this must do. Think in terms of, how long can I be without this service before I suffer a financial loss, miss a customer deadline, or suffer reputational damage? This is your crunch time, or in disaster speak, your maximum tolerable outage. Once you have that length of time, multiply it by 0.75 or 3/4, and this becomes the time that you want to resume your must do, so you ensure you can resume the must do prior to the time that the risk will cause your business harm. In disaster speak, this is your recovery time objective. Next, consider if there are manual workarounds, and I'll explain what that means. For an IT-dependent must do, can you produce it without the IT system? As an example, if you lose an EFTPOS machine, customers can still pay cash. Or as another example, you need specialist staff to operate a machine. You know there's a subcontractor who can assist at short notice, so write down those details and keep them handy for future reference. The second last step is to develop methods to recover the must do within the recovery time we discussed earlier. List step-by-step methods that are easily understood. The instruction needs to be easily followed so that somebody who has never seen this document before can follow it. That's why it's a good idea to create checklists for these processes. Now repeat these steps for your remaining must-dos. Follow the same process. It may take some time, and this is why we suggest only doing 5 to 10 as a start. Once you've completed them all, sort your must-dos from the shortest to longest time that these must be back in service, or using disaster speak, the recovery times. Note that this order may be vastly different from the order you originally had them in. However, it is this new order that you will need to restore or fix the products or services. Having a priority order is important. When there's a disaster or business interruption, you may have limited staff or facilities. Having these in order from shortest to longest allows you to direct the resources and people you have available and restore the must-dos into the most critical order. After you've compiled the top 5 to 10 must-dos into priority order, identified risks, some of which you've now mitigated, have a method to restore the must-dos by priority, you have yourself a basic business continuity plan. We'll go through some working details in the next slide. So to better understand this process, let's look at another working example. Let's line up two cafes in Main Street, Thomastown, both fictional. One is called Café Tradie, an established cafe that has been there for 30 years and has developed cheap and cheerful coffees and food. Their menu includes items from the Bain Marie, egg and bacon sandwiches, dim sims and pies. Café Tradie serves tradies and people in a hurry. The business is Thomastown icon. The other is a new cafe called Café Deliziosa. They open next door to Café Tradie. Deliziosa is Italian for delicious, and they have introduced higher end foods. Café Deliziosa was established 10 months ago, aiming at a change in local tastes that were looking for fresh cooked cuisine and higher end coffees. Prior to stage 3 COVID-19 restrictions, the business was doing okay, building a clientele that sat in the cafe and ate food and drank their coffees. They became popular with bike riders over the weekends, and they charged a small premium for the quality, which was approximately 20 cents extra per cup of coffee, and their menu items averaged about $8. Their lowest end foods were fresh cooked egg and bacon brioche and gourmet sandwiches. They had quiches, smashed avocado, homemade sausage rolls, and quinoa salads. Until stage 3, Café Deliziosa was making a small profit, which is really good for a startup. Stage 3 signalled a risk that was being realised though. Their clientele could no longer sit down and eat, which was their major revenue stream. Without people sitting down and ordering coffees, they would not sell the accompanying food. The coffees underpinned their finances. At the same time, Café Tradie was booming as local trades were rated as essential. Café Tradie figured that the fancy pants people next door would suffer a terrible fate. Then stage 4 hit. Café Tradie decided to apply for JobKeeper and close up during stage 4. They'd all be paid to take a break. The tradies, their clientele, would be limited, and it was a great time for a rest. However, Café Deliziosa was unable to claim JobKeeper because they hadn't been trading long enough. So closing up was not a viable option. In response, they began business continuity planning. They listed their business must-dos, and then they analysed each of their business using the following business attributes. Attribute 1, list how many people are required to deliver the must-do, and do they have any specialist skills. Attribute 2, list all suppliers that perform services or deliver products that you'll need to complete this must-do. Include logistics, components, other services, raw materials. Attribute 3, does the product or service require the use of specialist equipment? Attribute 4, is this must-do dependent on IT or telephony? Attribute 5, are there financial transactions or payments that need to be made to enable this must-do to be completed? And attribute 6, list the building and facilities that are used to support the must-do. As Café Deliziosa's business is centred around selling coffee and food, they listed their 5 business must-dos as 1, preparing coffee, 2, preparing food, 3, delivering food, 4, taking payments from customers, and 5, accounts, which is paying bills, payroll, so paying staff, tax, and so on. Café Deliziosa's answer looked like this. Attribute 1, people required. They required a barista, a cook, and a waitress. They understood that takeaway or delivery were their only options, so they needed a delivery driver. Attribute 2, supplies, services, or products required. Well, milk, coffee, tea, food, and sugar supplies were all available as they were essential under stage 4, so no restrictions were encountered. However, higher levels of stock would need to be maintained just in case they couldn't buy what they needed when they needed it. Additional takeaway packaging would be required, and so would a vehicle for deliveries, though the delivery driver could probably supply that. Attribute 3, specialist equipment. The coffee machine and kitchen were essential. A backup coffee machine was available as they purchased a smaller machine initially, which was deemed too small to meet regular demand, so they retained it as a spare. As long as they had access to their kitchen, the food could be produced. Attribute 4, IT and telephony requirements. The phone, the EFTPOS machine, and the cash register were essential. They could divert the fixed line to mobile, and they could take manual orders if they had to. They also decided to investigate online ordering partners in case they lost their EFTPOS facilities. Attribute 5, financial transactions and payments. Well, the till needed to be balanced at the end of each day. Payroll needed to be completed. So did the paying of invoices and rent, and reporting for single-touch payroll and BAS. The till could always be counted and then balanced once the system was back online. Payroll could be estimated based on prior payments and reconciled or adjusted later. Rent could be paid manually, and invoices could be paid by credit card if they had to. Missing a reporting date to the ATO may mean a little fine, but these were generally lodged early, so there'd be time to rectify any issues if one arose. Attribute 6, building and facilities. This was the big one. People could not sit down and eat or drink their coffees. They were in a position where they could use the kitchen, take orders, make coffee, and have limited people in the store waiting for their order. They also realised that many tradies and other locals were still working and they needed coffees, breakfast and lunches. As a result, they started offering gourmet toasted sandwiches, egg and bacon brioches, homemade sausage rolls, and packed sandwiches. Additionally, they called or emailed their customers and used social media to let people know that they were still open and now offering free home delivery for evening meals. These are all the details that will make their way into the Café Deliciosa's business continuity plan. I know of a business outside of the municipality that did exactly this. She reached out to her customers and is now home delivering. Her biggest customer is now a company that wants food packs delivered to their employees at home for online meetings. She's actually had to employ more people and has improved her profitability during this uncertain time. I'm not going to kid you, it's not always easy to find a way around business disruptions, but try things, give it a go. Write down what worked and what didn't. Keep the things that work and learn lessons from the things that don't. I would also encourage you to take advantage of your time at the moment. Try to do things that you've wanted to do but have not had the time to do before.
Here we're providing you with a list of events that can disrupt or interrupt your business. I understand the list is quite long and I won't read them out verbatim. Some might not be relevant to you, but I'll just give you a moment to go through the list in the handout and note any of those that are relevant to your business. Please note too though that this is included in the email that was sent to you earlier. COVID has pointed out to many businesses that have never had a business continuity plan that such a plan would come in handy. I'd like you to re-examine that list and think about those times that are rare, such as pandemic, and we hope that remains that way, malware attacks and crimes that directly affect your business. Now think about those listed items that can happen on a daily basis. A business frequently faces loss of IT, staff absenteeism due to illness, power outages, and other listed items. The great benefit of a business continuity plan is it caters for large and small interruptions. If you like, it's a self-insurance policy for your business and your profitability. Bear in mind that your customers are most likely to be forgiving for the rare events and not for those that you can anticipate.
So staff inclusion is critical when forming a business continuity plan. Often your staff will know more about their role in the business than we anticipate. For example, your staff will know of risks or vulnerabilities that you will have no knowledge of. In our experience, staff always pull out the risks that no one else is aware of. They also bring a great deal of customer, process, and supplier insight. Another compelling reason is that your staff can list the must-dos that they perform that make your business work, and they may already know some of the manual workarounds, simply because they've shown initiative in the past. This is valuable information to record, particularly if their expertise is needed and they just happen to be off sick. Imagine if your most valuable employee breaks a leg and you have no idea how they performed their job, and you have an important customer order that has to go out. Let's say the person that broke her leg works in a florist and it's 7 days before Valentine's Day. And this person is responsible for all of the ordering of the flowers, receiving online orders, and organising delivery. Even though this employee has not had a sick day in 10 years and is super reliable, you wisely went through the business continuity process with her 3 months ago. This employee provided a list of her critical deliverables, and you have a list of the suppliers, delivery drivers, and the know-how to look at the online orders. You understood the risk and had already trained another employee to be able to perform this task. Although you were a person down in the lead up to Valentine's Day, you'd still be able to fulfill your obligations on your most profitable day of the year. Now let's consider the opposite. You didn't get this information prior to your team member breaking their leg. The absence of this type of information could be a disaster for any business. Think of your key people, those that have been with you for a while, and think about the knowledge they must have. The scenario is the same should the employee quit and join a competitor, retire, or win the lottery. If you have a business continuity plan, you'll have a plan for important tasks that underpin your business. I've known of many occasions where a key employee has quit and devastated the business. They've even sometimes emerged as a competitor and stolen customers in some instances. It is a basic self-insurance policy for your business. Stop and think about the employees that could leave your business vulnerable. The staff will help to create what we call recovery plans, which is a fancy name to get your business going again. Their involvement is critical.
What you can see in the slide image is emergency services setting up to practice their disaster management procedures in a drilled emergency practice run or an emergency exercise, as we call it. They practice so when there's a real need to respond to an emergency, they know exactly how to do so. They've tested the knowledge of their procedures and their overall understanding. They alter training, equipment, and other procedures based on the outcomes of the mock emergency. It enables continuous improvement, and it means they're familiar with what they have to do so they don't panic when they're faced with a real situation of a rolled school bus. Imagine the situation was real and a busload of kids are trapped in their school bus. Now imagine emergency services arrive and get to work with their untested machinery and procedures, and they don't actually know what to do. The kids remain trapped, scared, injured. Now that won't really happen because the professionals are well practiced and they leave very little chance. The need for testing is precisely the same for business continuity. While you're not saving a busload of kids, you might be saving your business. Allow you and your staff to trial the procedures, the systems, the workarounds, contact alternate suppliers. It's okay if you find flaws. In fact, that's terrific if you find flaws. You'll be able to fix the plan and refine the procedures. Training and other aspects for when a real business interruption does occur is vital.
Now, it's important to realise that a business continuity plan is not always going to be the perfect answer to your problem. Take our current situation, for example. Prior to this pandemic, business continuity plans were never meant to be activated or used for such a prolonged period of time. This means that business continuity plans need to be detailed yet flexible at the same time so that they can be adapted as best as possible to the situation in which you find yourself. However, some things can never be planned for until they happen. 6 months ago, no one would have believed that our government would be forcing us to change the way we trade so substantially, as it had never really happened before to this extent. So this wouldn't have been a consideration in a business continuity plan. But I guarantee it will be moving forward. Business continuity plans will now detail how businesses kept trading during such a difficult time. Did you move to an online presence? Did you start taking phone orders? Did you have to quickly upskill staff so they could perform multiple tasks to adhere to the stage 4 restrictions on the amount of workers in the workplace? Did you have to move furniture around so you're allowing staff and customers enough space for the very short time we were under stage 2 restrictions? What PPE did you need to buy and how much of it? Did you run masterclasses or webinars to engage clients in a new way? Did you come up with new services to offer? If you didn't keep trading during stage 4, ask yourself why not? Do any of the things I've just mentioned apply to you, or could they apply to you? Is there something you could have been doing to keep your business going during this time? If so, it's not too late. The sooner you start the process of getting your business back, the sooner you'll be successful at it. Remember the story of the 2 cafes? Not trying is the only guaranteed way to fail here, especially if you have staff covered by JobKeeper. A lot of people have viewed JobKeeper as a paid holiday, but it's not. Wherever possible, you should be engaging your employees that are on JobKeeper, having them complete work within the restrictions, even if it's not what they normally do. Could they process online orders? Could they call customers from home as a welfare check? Customers love that. Can you hold a brainstorming session over the phone or Zoom with those that you can't meet with? You never know where a brilliant idea for your business is going to come from. Most of us would rather be working and productive than sitting around bored, grounded, and dejected, making no contribution to anything. For those of you who have had made changes and continued trading, your task is going to be to decide which of your newly implemented procedures, services, or products you'll want to carry forward into COVID normal and beyond.
Look, as far as costs go for business continuity, and we'll also discuss grants as well, one of the things you can do is to put these steps in. We have sent you a worksheet. Work through your top 5, top 10. The worksheet will help you and go through it. But somebody may want to know what it costs to develop a business continuity plan for a company such as us. Well, the answer really is dependent on the size and the complexity of your business. Obviously, there's no one option. You can go it alone if you like, using the skills and processes that we've walked you through today, or you can hire consultants such as us to do all the hard work for you. As a part of this webinar, we're offering a free quotation to any participants who'd like one. Simply reach out the details that are on the screen. Certain industries will have access to grants. We also have a news flash from the City of Whittlesea, and I understand that Rebecca may go through this a little bit more later. I'll read it verbatim. Council is committed to supporting our business continuity to ensure the viability and promote endurance. The City of Whittlesea Business Assistant Grants Program has been designed to provide relief to local businesses to support their resilience now and into the future. The BAGP, and that's how they write it, supports the local businesses through the 3 funding categories. Business adaption, and that's about providing access to new markets, transitioning to online, or implementing innovation or new business models. And I'll go through what that means in a little bit of time. Revitalising spaces. Now, outdoor dining has been one of the areas I saw on the news last night that the state government will be encouraging moving forward, that if you are a restaurant, but also too, it'll be about revitalising spaces that may struggle under COVID to be able to be somewhere you can work and your customers can come to. And business continuity by strengthening business stability by engaging in professional business or legal advice. I understand that the applications may be available as of next week, but I'll leave Rebecca to give you a little bit more information on that. Now, Whittlesea is obviously the front runner, but other councils and the state government have some grants available too. We can discuss those after this. I'll just talk about business adaption and business continuity, or versus business continuity. I hurriedly put this slide together to discuss what business adaption is. Business adaption takes specific risks to your business. For simplicity, I'll use the example of counter service, something we can all understand. Starting with the lowest point in the hierarchy in front of you, or point 6, a solution would be providing PPE, and this is the lowest or least effective level of control. Number 5 is about administrative procedures. Let's say you allow only 2 people into that shop front at once. Number 4 is about engineering control, and that could relate to the installation of glass barriers between your staff and the customer. Number 3 is about isolating the hazard. Perfect example of that is click and collect. 2, substituting the hazard would be self-serve scan and payments. Re-engineering would be about online purchasing and home delivery. Now, think in the terms of where you could remove a risk that COVID presents. It might be anything from training, issuing PPE to an e-commerce solution. These items might be considered appropriate for grants. Even with these items in place, business continuity remains important. A BCP can cater for the risks that you've identified, and once you did, the controls are just far too expensive, or it caters also for risks that you don't actually know about. Like, for instance, one of your staff winning Powerball, a power outage, a roadblock, or being subject to a long-winded, once-in-a-lifetime event like a pandemic. It is impossible to forecast or to cater for all business risks. A BCP gives you a one fit-for-purpose result to all interruptions.
So today we've learned what a business continuity plan is. It's a self-insurance policy that can be utilised in emergencies, disasters, for key staff absenteeism, or if somebody digs up your power cable. We've discussed how a BCP is utilised, the need that COVID has created amongst your customers and suppliers, and how to go about developing a plan. The major takeaways we want you to remember are to start small. 5 must-dos are a great start. Too many processes and sub-processes, suppliers and staff involvements will be overwhelming. You can always add more later. Include your staff in the development of the BCPs. They'll often know of risks that no one else has ever thought of, and it creates ownership of the final plan. A BCP allows you to continue to supply goods and services regardless of business disruptions. There might be a demand of some of your bigger customers going forward. A BCP allows you to open before your competitors during interruptions, giving you a huge competitive advantage. A BCP reinforces your business, and adaption is a process to address known risks. Grants may be available in some instances, and we can arrange a free assessment for you and help investigate grants that might be available to you to assist with the cost. We'd like to thank you for joining us today and for sticking with us through such a dry topic. Now it's over to your questions. If we can have a look at the chat feed and see if there's any in there. John?
Yeah, look, I'm getting the chat feed up now. What I might do is unmute people, or ask you to unmute if you'd like to. You can shoot with your questions if you like. So, okay. We've got a bit of feedback there from someone, so I'm not really sure what that involves. I'm just trying to find the actual drop down.
Okay.
It's the first time that I've used that I've actually used this.
It's all right, John. There's no questions actually that I can see in here. Anyone? Oh, here's a new message. No questions from the end. Has anybody online got questions for us that we can help you with today?
Yeah, well, look, I think really that if there is while you're thinking about a question or two, that if you really think about business continuity, do keep it simple. One of the things that I didn't put in the presentation slide, Telstra consider they have 16 must-dos, if you like. And while that's got a myriad of long processes and so forth, they've got 16 things that they must do in their business continuity plan, which doesn't sound a lot for a big organisation, but a big broad topics will be things like keep the mobile telephone network working, make sure internet's working, keep 4G going, keep customer service lines up and running. When you think about it, the big hitting things, don't get into too much detail with your must-dos initially, because the detail will fall out, would be my advice. Look, in regard also to, I don't know if we've got anyone outside of Whittlesea on board. What we do have though, that I'm aware of, is that I believe there's at least another couple of municipalities that are following the lead of Whittlesea that do have grants available. The other one is also in the food supply chain, right through from primary industry, transport, right into the area of food. The big government's got quite a considerable grant funding available there.
Well, if there's no questions today, we might hand back over to Rebecca to close us out.
Thank you, Bree and John. It was a great pleasure to have you present for us and explain the ins and outs of business continuity and risk planning. It's quite a process, but I think you've put us on a good start. In regard to our grants, to anybody interested, applications are due to open on Friday. After this event, I will send an email to attendees about more details. And to the attendees, thank you for coming. It was great to have you here, and I hope to see you at our business events in the future.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, thank you, Rebecca, too, and the City of Whittlesea, and everybody for tuning in today. I know business continuity can seem quite a dry topic, but it's becoming more and more relevant outside of the big firms and into smaller firms and community services groups like we've got online today. So I really hope that you've got something out of it. If you have any feedback, please share it with us. We love to improve. And we really hope that you got some good messages out of today, and there's some things you can take forward to improve your business and to basically increase your competitive advantage. Okay, well, look, thank you. I think we'll end the presentation there, and we'll move on. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.